The Oregon Trail was the most widely used route to the fertile valleys of the Pacific Northwest during the mid-1800s. The Oregon Trail was mapped by the 1830s, but it wasn't until the early 1840s that travel became widespread. The first real wagon train set out in 1841. The so-called Great Migration, which involved thousands of settlers, began in 1843. Settlers going to the Pacific Northwest began their journey in Independence, Missouri. 1,500 miles and 6 tedious months later, the lucky ones reached the lush Willamette Valley in present-day Oregon. The Oregon Trail passed over the lands of numerous Indian tribes. The Sioux on the Great Plains, for instance, often met the wagons and traded blankets, clothes, knives, rifles, and other goods with the whites. The westward tide took a heavy toll on the Plains Indians' way of life. As the settlers hunted for food along the way, they scared off or killed many of the animals that the Indians depended on for food and clothing. For this and other reasons, there were many conflicts between Indians and whites. But the Indian menace reported in the newspapers back east was nearly always exaggerated. Some experts say that less than 4% of the deaths along the Oregon Trail were caused by Indians. Most agree that the biggest killer along the trail was disease. Cholera and dysentery, diseases caused by contaminated water, were the most common. Once the settlers got to the fruitful Oregon Territory, they faced more problems. The trouble was, both the U.S. and Great Britain claimed it, and up until then, both had agreed to control it jointly. Citizens of both nations were allowed to trade and settle in the region. But soon after President James K. Polk took office in 1845, the U.S. told Britain it wanted control of the territory. The U.S. said it should have the territory because there were many more Americans than British in the region. In 1846, the British agreed and gave up its claims to what are now the states of Oregon, Washington, Idaho, and parts of Montana and Wyoming. The agreement set the northern boundary of the continental United States, the boundary that still exists today.